for it, we like to do some practical exercises with some energy sensing and maybe demonstrate some transmutation, which hopefully will lead on to you wanting to do some of that yourselves at some point. And I'm sure you already do that, but maybe not in the same way as we do. Who knows? Well, most people, I'm sure, know about geopathic stress and the planetary and universal grid systems. So we're not going to try and teach Granny how to suck eggs, because you probably know more about dowsing than we do. But what we want to try and do is to bring in a new perspective on what we do. Because nowadays we don't need to spend ages knocking in metal stakes into the ground, which has always appeared to me to be quite a brutal way of healing, just in order to shift a line a few feet. Because we're now beginning to remember what our forefathers and our forefathers' forefathers' forefathers always knew. So we're remembering how to heal the earth in a gentle way without having to be brutal, and to harmonise ourselves with the earth as well, which I feel is absolutely crucial. If we're going to work with earth energies, we have to know about earth energies, in other words, be in tune with them. So, a lot of people now use Raditex to eradicate geopathic stress, or crystals, but actually they're just a temporary cure. So once your crystal's taken away or your Raditex is switched off, the problem comes back. If you've got geopathic stress, it will immediately, within minutes, return once you've switched that equipment off. So what we do is transmute that black energy, or black streams in terms of earth acupuncture, we transmute it to what are called white streams, but actually we use gold and platinum because they're a much higher frequency than white, but the actual technical terms are black streams crossing or white streams crossing. And they usually appear on node points, which I don't need to tell you about because you obviously know exactly what I'm talking about. Now there are many ways in which you can do that, but the basic premise for all of it is impeccable intention and clarity and consciousness and connection to the highest source, and also connection to the earth's core. And the reason we do that is because if you're completely connected and your base chakra is well grounded into the earth, you can then fly. You can actually go all over the universe, actually. But if you're just trying to heal this planet, you can do distant healing. You can heal in Australia. You can heal geopathic stress. You can move on earthbound spirits in Australia, wherever you like, as long as you're well grounded, because you then have a safe space to come back to. So you have an invisible string or a cord connecting you to the core of the earth, which means you can then go off just like a balloon on a string, go off and do your work, and then you come back safely, groundedly and protected. So nowadays, you're probably all very well aware that our consciousness is expanding very, very rapidly. And the people who are doing this sort of healing work are actually having to do more and more and more of it, because that's what, our higher selves is here to do. We are here as healers, as earth healers, and people healers and building healers. And we actually work with buildings, land, earthbound spirits, entities. We work with people's energy systems. So you could say that we're sort of all-round healers, if you like, or we're channels for all-round healing energy to be used for the greater good of everybody on the planet, including ourselves. So the fact that we're having to work so hard at the moment, and you might well find that people who are actually doing a lot of field work, that you're saying, oh, please give me a break. I just need a few weeks off. But that is not being allowed at the moment. The powers that be are just saying, no, there's so much work to be done. And this Mother Earth who supports us and gives us life needs so much work. And those of us who really love her have been called upon, and it's our mission, if you like, in this lifetime, to actually create a healing space for our children and their children, and for whoever or whatever comes next. So what we really want to do tonight is to introduce a different way of dealing with problem areas like geopathic stress and ghosts, or earthbound spirits, I prefer to call them, because ghosts sounds a bit weird and spooky, and actually has connotations that I personally don't really like. All we're really dealing with in all this work is energy that is out of place. None of it is good, none of it is bad. It's just energy in the wrong place. So we're trying to get energy back in its correct order according to the divine plan. You know, man came here and mucked it all up, and we're here now to put it back together again. So I hope you understand what I'm talking about. As I said, the ancient people didn't need dowsing rods. They didn't have dowsing rods or crystals or pendulums, because they were so in tune with the earth and the planetary cycles, the universal cycles, nature's cycles, and their bodies were so sensitive, they didn't need tools. Nowadays, we're getting back to the point where we don't need tools, and that's what we're really going to try and work with tonight, is working with our bodies as the ultimate dowsing rod. So when we get round to doing the practical exercises, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind very much, to leave your dowsing rods behind. But by all means, use them for confirmation if you would like to. That's fine. Now, it depends on how sensitive we are and how in tune we are with nature and with the seasons. Upon that depends the degree of good we can do in our work. So the more sensitive we are and the more clear and pure our intention, the greater the benefit of the work that we do. And it's a bit like going to school, learning your alphabet. You know, you start with the simple, really basic, really obvious things, and then you go back, you go down the alphabet to Z, and you get to the much more complicated stuff, which is not so tangible, and we're all here dealing with very intangible energy, which actually has got a lot of scientific background, a lot of scientific proof. But to your average skeptic, what we do is weird. And what we're trying to do is take away the weirdness and make it much more mainstream and much more accepted and acceptable. Because I've come across, or Roberta and I, when we work together, have come across people who are so skeptical and saying, well, I'll try it, but I actually don't believe it's going to work. And afterwards they said, I couldn't have paid you £1 million for what you've just done. It changes people's lives. And when you're dealing with things like geopathic stress, you're talking about potentially lethal energy. As you probably know, it can cause anything from just general fatigue to full-blown cancers. People die if they've lived on geopathic stress for a long time. So we try and eradicate it as much as we can. And it's actually, in my opinion, maybe slightly controversial, but I think the should be incorporated into all healing systems. And I think doctors now are beginning to recognise the validity of what we do. And it's the same with homeopathy. 15 years ago, a doctor would never recommend it. Anybody went to go and see a homeopath or a naturopath. But nowadays it's happening, almost as a matter of course. I can tell you from personal experience that my own doctor has said to me, I can't do any more because I've had, yeah, it's a long story, but lots of back problems. Go and see an osteopath or go and see a herbalist or a homeopath. And that's really unusual. And hopefully in 10 years' time, they're going to be saying, I think you're living with geopathic stress. Go and see someone who can clear that. Go and see a dowser and someone who will transmute. And wouldn't that be just so fantastic? I mean, that's my vision for the future, certainly for the next 10 years. And yeah, it would be really great. One of the reasons our ancestors didn't need tools and were very, very clear energetically was because they lived in tune, in time with the seasons. And they ate seasonal foods, they went to bed at sunset, and they got up at sunrise. And their bodies told them when spring was coming, because they felt the energy start to rise. They knew when, and apart from the fact that it's obvious, but their bodies were so in tune, their internal organs were saying, okay, it's time to clear out the liver, or it's time to clear out the kidneys and bladder, or whatever it may be. And their bodies were doing the work for them through what they ate and what they actually did, the lifestyle. They didn't have the problems that we have. We have enormous pollution through emissions, through emotional pollution, which gets lodged within buildings and in the earth. And they didn't have electromagnetics. So really, you know, we really are struggling against the odds before we even start. So an awareness of those sort of pollutions, I think, is a very good thing to have now. And you probably all know about that as well. But what I'm really saying is to clear out your own system and to sensitize your own system and to have a very pure intention is the basis of what we do and the results that we get. Standing stones and circles. Now, I read one of your gentlemen very kindly sent me one of your 1997 magazines that was talking about the Rollright stones. Now, standing stones and stone circles and sort of all the old sites, sacred sites, are transmitters and receivers of energy, which can spread out for thousands and thousands of miles. In the same way as if we get our own energetic systems right, so can we. We can expand our auras to go to different planets or to cover the whole of this planet if we want to. If you train enough and you work hard enough, all you have to do is to go into a room, expand your aura, and you've cleared it. Same with geopathic stress. But that does take a fair bit of training and a fair bit of personal work. But I can see from here that this room is already clearing. And this place here is fantastic for workshops. She's rubbing her hands in glee. The thought of running transmutation workshops from here would be so good. So if you're interested, please, there's a piece of paper and please write your name and address on it. Hopefully we're all trying to achieve the same thing, and that is healing the earth. So what we'd like to do is to get all of our energy systems up and running now, and to use our dowsing rod, our physical dowsing rod, to do some physical sensitizing exercises. The only hard bit is going to be moving the chairs. I promise you that's the hardest. It's the most exercise you'll get apart from lifting your pints at the break. So, I don't know if you'd like to say anything else, Roberta, but I think it's nearly time to, if you're all up for it, do a bit of, yeah. Do a bit of, yeah. Everybody feeling okay?
Can I just ask a point?
Please interrupt.
I was talking to an old chap of about 70, 80, who was a very outspoken guy, and he had worked as a greenkeeper and an agronomist in very high circles, and he's probably the most respected person in the golfing world. And he was saying, of course I dowse, you know, I find drains and things on it. And he looked at, I said, well, funny enough, I'm a dowser. And he looked at my shoes, not in those, you're not, he said. I said, what do you mean? You've got rubber soles on. John, I've never been told I couldn't dowse in rubber shoes. He said, well, you know, you're insulated against, you know, the energy. Have you sort of come across that? I mean, do you take your shoes off to earth yourself?
Sometimes. It has been rooted. I actually don't believe it myself.
Well,
I actually don't think. I think if you intend to go out there and dowse, and you know, you don't have to just use your feet. You can use the whole the rest of your body. So. Sorry,
one thing to remember, because my view is, yes, it can make a difference, but it's your intention that actually makes that difference. Here we are, we're standing, as it happens, I'm wearing leather soles again, but we're much, much bigger than our physical body. We go kind of like way up there, way out there, and way down into the earth. And it's that electromagnetic field that we use when we're dowsing, or when we're transmitting, when we're working, when we're transmuting, whatever we happen to do. So if we think, as we walk along, okay, I'm insulated from the earth, I'm not going to make particularly good contact with it, as we think, so we are. But, on the other hand, if we know that in our thinking, as the intention we are grounding, then grounding will be. That's simple.
Intention is the key to everything. You can dowse wearing nothing. You can dowse wearing a rough suit. You can dowse.
Scary.
You can marry gold or whatever.
Just stick to moving the chair.
I don't know whether I'm
Using your hands.
to work with class here.
I don't want to be distracted, am I?
Yeah, we go for the fast tax in here, thank you.
Sorry, so nice.
That's a very good question though, because it's a question a lot of people are ask.
But it's extraordinary. I've been all these, at it for 4 or 5 years, and nobody's ever mentioned that. And it was the first thing he said, and he's a wise old bird, very, very wise, very outspoken about things and people's views. And you know, he obviously was, you know, fairly heavily into that, mainly to find drains and water and everything that solved problems. But he said, oh, I always go out. He said, oh, it'll probably work, but you get a far better reaction if you wear leathers, and that's what I always do.
Oh, well.
Never solved.
Any other questions before we kind of...
Yeah, please interrupt all the way through.
Do enjoy questions. Everybody titters nervously and sits on their seats now. Okay, well, if you kind of like to put your pen and paper to one side, please. And
Where are we going to put the chair?
stand up.
And then we'll swap over.
So,
Any other feedback from anybody particularly? I mean, do you all feel as though you felt something, or was there anyone who felt nothing?
Right, excellent.
Were you trying to feel something?
Yeah.
Okay. And what do you think it was that stopped you feeling? Was it because there were too many people here, or you didn't have enough time?
Good God, no. I'm used to working with lots of people.
So,
I'm just not sensitive to that sort of thing.
okay, it takes practice. It takes time and practice.
I don't want to be.
Well, there you are then. There's a gentleman over here who said the
place as well.
Well, I think it's, you can't see it, obviously you can't sort of feel it, like you see something, you can feel it, obviously things you can't see nothing, you've got all stuff there to start with, like, you know.
Can you
Oh, but you see, one can see it. That's just
You
another
can see electricity jumping.
Yeah,
You can't-
I mean,
normally
it's only jumping from one to
Yeah,
another
normally you
point,
can't, can
but
you?
normally you can't see
No.
it, but it's there, isn't it?
I can feel people's auras. Probably I could detect them as easy as I can with a rod. In fact, they were very specific, and I could also, feel the certainly the red and purple at the top, and it's weird. I do try and show people, how you detect auras, and I don't find it difficult to, but poking people with rods can be a bit dangerous. if you can go into this sort of trance and get this sensitive, if you do it with your hands, you don't have any difficulty at all.
Exactly.
You
Right,
don't let anybody
another
through
tool
with
to
a
work with
dowsing
now.
rod. Yeah, right.
Wristwatch instead.
There's a reaction.
Often too, when you're working with your hands like that, if one steps out of one's own way, which is what all this work is about, stepping out of our way so that we can use these things, these inherent knowledge that we all have. But in order to recover that and to really develop it, we have to step out of our own way. In other words, stop thinking and just let be. And then all of a sudden, click. Images start appearing in our mind, which is actually what's going on, so we can actually begin to see auras as well as feel them. We begin to become aware of what else is in a space with us and who else, because there are far many, much more than just our physical presences in any particular place. And we're much more than our physical bodies. So these sort of tools that we're exploring now are the very basis that we have to know when we're doing transmutation work. So you have to be able to feel, sometimes see, smell, etc., what is actually in a place. And then you can actually communicate with it in order to start healing.
Can I just say something before you go on? I was just going to say, is there anybody who doesn't feel grounded at the moment? Is there anybody who feels a little bit floaty or... Yeah? Okay. So what I'd like to do, because we didn't do this right at the beginning, is for everybody to just ground and grow, stand very quietly, and just imagine your tailbone growing through the core, to the core of the earth. So almost in a meditative state, always affirming you are firmly grounded and planted and safe. So your tailbone is going to grow through the crust of the earth, down 200 feet, 300 feet, 1,000 feet, until you reach the core star, right at the center of the earth. When you reach that core star, wrap your tail bone around the core star and imagine your tailbone has a hook in it. And hook into that core star, the very center of the earth. And then when you've done that, leave the hook in and come back up your tailbone and back up into your body, and take your time, as long as it takes for you to be able to do that. Breathe.
grounded now? Good.
That's a good exercise to do before you start this work, actually. The reason we didn't do it at at the stage before we started working was because we're not actually yet working with negative energy, but if you have a tendency to float out of your body, it's a good idea to do it anyway, and always do it before you actually start working with that sort of energy. You can do the same with
Upwards
heavens.
as well. You can actually bring in heaven and earth's forces.
It's heaven,
into your
earth,
body.
and man in the middle, the principle of yin and yang. So, gosh, that feels very different, doesn't it? It's grounded.
Okay. Yes, this principle of heaven, earth and man. Man, of course, is the transducer in the middle. It's the actual force that brings those two energies together through the heart chakra, basically. So when we work with these forms of energies and transmutation, we need to be able to see what they are, where a line is, not just feel it. We can feel it, we dive it like that, and then one quite often sits on it, and often will travel out of the body, up or down a line, to where you get to a particular place which needs a block moved very often. Sometimes it will be a road which has been built, and we build very often without thinking of the consequences, i.e. we remove trees, we cut into the Earth's meridian structure, and no prayers are said, no forgiveness, no going to the land and saying, look, this is what we intend to do. Thank you for your presence here, Jesus, but now we need to move because we have a road going through here or whatever. If people were more conscious of this and did this as a matter of course, then there would be far less geopathic stress. There would be much less pollution of that form. So the first thing one does when one works with land is to ask permission. Can we work with you? This is what I'm here for. So you go to the resident guardian of the particular place that you're working with, and you say, look, this is why I'm here. And you literally get into a conversation with that energy, which is the energy of a particular place. Sometimes it's the Devic kingdom, in other words, plants. They have consciousness too. So does this table. Not in the same form of consciousness that we all have, but nonetheless it has energy. And energy in various forms is consciousness, just of a different degree. Okay, what I'd like to do now is for half of the room to be sitting here, if you like, or standing, whichever, and the other half just to walk around and see if you can feel any energy which might be blocked, or you feel or think.
Would you like to give us a little bit of feedback of what you felt as you went around the room the second time when you split into groups? Talk to me, somebody talk to me.
Feeling different people's energy fields and homing in on the, what I call the powerhouses, the healers. Quite interesting, different energy fields.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
I can certainly feel energy coming out from the walls, the corners. I could actually close my eyes and
detect where the corners were, especially over there and there. And around the lights, I was trying to work out where where the current was coming in. I think I got that more or less right. And one could certainly feel the energy fields. This energy line down there was very obvious.
Even more pronounced now the chairs have been moved, because
Yeah.
originally we moved the chairs in to
That's right,
stop it a
that's
little
right,
bit,
yeah.
but it's really humming now. Did anybody feel any energy blocked anywhere?
Yes, I do. Across there, I felt a block.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you couldn't move through it.
Like a wall?
Well, there was a line running out there. I wasn't actually walking around, I was just standing in the door watching. And 3 or 4 people registered going across both directions. A line came up through there.
Yeah.
There's
There's also one going across that way.
Yeah.
Anywhere else?
One place that everyone visits is in there.
Yeah. It's really claggy in there, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really claggy in there. That's what I was waiting for someone to say. Thank you for
Well,
saying that.
everybody knows it's tiny.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but yeah, it's
Energy tends to accumulate and get stuck in corners, and often you will feel nothing in corners or you'll feel a lot in corners, but often it's blocked energy, so these corners are actually quite blocked. This one's not too bad, but that one and that one, obviously around the corner there, are quite stuck. What we were going to do was to do a little bit of transmutation ourselves without getting you involved, because with 60 or how many people there are here and a limited time scale, I don't want to get you involved into something that
We're doing all night.
we could be here doing all night. So what we'd like to do is to do that within a workshop space. So if any of you, we were talking about workshops earlier on, would like to take part in a workshop and learn some transmutation techniques, please just write your name on the list and contact Jo, and she and I will, where are you, Jo? There. And she and I will be in contact to arrange dates and places. How do you feel about transmuting that line and getting people to feel it afterwards, or do you actually feel as though you don't want to do that now? I'm looking at the time. That's all. So let's just explain a few transmutation techniques to you then, without actually demonstrating anything. Because actually if we try and demonstrate something, you may not see anything except us sitting on the ground. Because what we actually do a lot of the time is journey down a line. In other words, we leave our bodies behind and we take our energy bodies and we might travel as far as Australia, or however far the line goes. And a lot of the process of transmuting is witnessing what's gone on in the land before you came along. So you can go way back. I mean, we've gone back to Roman times and pre-Roman times sometimes when we're clearing lines. And it's like watching a cinema film in fast forward. Click, 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 fast frames of different lifetimes, different eras, different people, maybe some ghosts stuck in the line who need clearing on, maybe even entities in the line that need clearing on or need to be changed to light beings instead of dark beings, and most of the time they're there desperately trying to become light beings. That's why they're there. And very often when you're working with this energy, it will come to you whether you're looking for it or not, and you can try and keep it away, but it says, ah ha ha, there's a light being. And it comes to you, and you have to work with it if it comes to you. Because that's what the upstairs department tell you to do. So, yes, witnessing is one of the prime things that we do, which is why you probably wouldn't see us doing too much anyway. Various other techniques we use, Roberta will explain.
Yes, like any form of healing, most of it is witnessing. In the same way as if one is healing, working, say, as a healer with people, one can work in exactly the same way with the land or with buildings. So one would go in and one would literally talk to the space. And one would find out what and who was in that particular space. Many, many times there are what people often call ghosts. Sometimes they're people who don't realise they've died because it's a different physical reality. It's still, to a certain extent, physical. It's just a different physicality to the one we have here. And you often have to talk to them and show them the way to another plane. You also get involved in a lot of healing on different levels. And as I said before, most of it is witnessing. So you witness events that have gone on in time in a certain place. And events are often held, history is held in lines, in walls, in the atomic structure, the pre-atomic structure of any particular place. So that's what you're actually tuning into. It's history. And very like people who maybe have gone through some trauma, and part of that healing process is actually releasing that trauma. So it is exactly the same thing with a line or a building. Many times when one's actually witnessed that and spoken, witnessed the history, then that energy releases and it changes to something much lighter, something much gentler, much happier.
Healthier.
And healthier for everyone, not just us, people, but trees and animals, and the other inhabitants in the places that we live in. When one journeys down the line, it's very often a question of projecting oneself out of one's body. And as Jan was saying earlier, you can find yourself in Australia or in Greenland or whatever, and you'll be travelling up a line, actually working with the energy which is actually stuck. It's kind of emotional. Very often it's emotion. For instance, if you're working on a battlefield, the scenes will be from battles. You may not know that that particular piece of land or whatever has had battles going on it, or car accidents or whatever.
Landfill sites are particularly horrendous.
Very, very, people, it would be a good idea if we were all wiser as to what actually we put into landfill sites. So one witnesses these pictures, and often the emotions, a lot of the time the emotions which are actually causing that particular stagnation in energy, and releases it. Because like somebody who, again going back to the healing scenario with people, very often what we do when we're healing is we listen to someone's story, and just the very fact of being there and listening, that's all one has to do, and that person begins to get better, because the energy is being released, the energy of whatever it might happen to be. So emotional blocks, say, in the body. The planet is no different, buildings are no different. Emotion, vibrational energy gets stuck in a certain place, and until it's witnessed, and witnessing is part of the transmutation process, you can't release.
Very often you'll find us witnessing things which are really quite unpleasant. It's not necessarily a pleasant job. Sometimes you'll find us in absolute floods of tears while we're working. Sometimes you'll find us in hysterical laughter because some of the things that we see are very, very funny. Or else they're so revolting that even we can't handle it, and what you do is, instead of crying, you laugh and burst into hysterics. Anyway, there are other techniques such as using sound chanting. Sometimes we use Sanskrit chanting because that's a very, very pure language, Sanskrit. And the purer the energy you use, the quicker it transmutes. Sometimes we use musical instruments. We might drum, or play a flute or a conch. We call in, because we both work shamanically, we call in our ancestors and power animals to come in and help us. Sometimes we'll send in wolf or whoever it may be to go down and clear the line for us if there's been something particularly that he can deal with, or rhino. It all sounds a bit airy-fairy, but these things are very real. And what you see in science fiction movies is true. It's real. It's channeled. It's not imagination. We have actually witnessed these things. The things that you see on Ghostbusters and films like that, they are real. It's really going on.
They just happen in another plane. But we're all interconnected. So one plane affects another.
It's like going through, slipping in from one world to another world, slipping through a veil. And actually sometimes what's hard is coming back to, the real world, in other words, this world. So you're sort of walking with a foot in both worlds. Has anybody read any Carlos Castaneda?
Yes.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. That can be hard. So anyway, there are lots and lots of various techniques, but the primary basis of everything you do is intention. If your intention is strong enough, you are capable of doing anything, as long as your intention is impeccable. Because it's also possible to use very, very strong intention for the wrong side.
Energy is neutral, and it's down to the impeccability and the love, because that is where it comes from, the heart. The love with which all of us work.
Wouldn't that be a strong word used for responsibility? I think that's much more serious.
The love?
Yes, because you can love the black. You can love, we think you can love on the black side, but the responsibility
Pure love.
is much. What do you define as pure love? You see, somebody who is focused on the one side, we may denote what we're doing as the opposite side.
I see what you're saying.
It's the responsibility, but it's much more strong word to be used, I think.
Impeccability.
Impeccability, I like that word better. But yes, responsibility. Yeah, I mean, you can call it what you like, as long as it is pure and connected to Godhead, as opposed to connected to the underworld. It's a bit like white witchcraft and black witchcraft. Yes, I hear what you're saying, and I completely take that on board. Yeah. But, there are many ways of teaching and there are many ways of demonstrating. But now I don't believe is the right time or the right place, because there are too many people here, and if we, within a limited time scale, try and take on what I think is going on here, it could take a very long time, and also we are responsible for your, for you going home clear. We don't want what we call the dog shit syndrome. We don't want to just step in it and move it elsewhere. What we do with energy and when we're transmuting is we turn it into light. We don't just move it from one place to another.
Could I make a suggestion?
Sure.
As perhaps as a demo, I mean, I know it can be done. If you created either a horror or an energy line shortly that people can walk through to feel the difference. And then it's easily dispersed, we can all disperse it afterwards, or you do it yourselves.
Okay.
If that's what you know.
I think it's very strange about these energy lines, odd lines in this room, because we've had several speakers over the last 2 or 3 years who've detected them. They all had an excuse not to sort them out.
Right, let's do it then.
In fact, the girl, I can't remember last year, she was talking about blocked drains, and she was fairly sure that there was a blocked drain round about here, and she said, oh well, I'm staying the night, but I've got an appointment in Plymouth at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, so I haven't got time to deal with it. Another guy came, he says, has anybody got a, what was it, he was looking for a bullseye, or because he, you know, if he'd had this stone, which he usually carried, he could have sorted it out, but he hadn't.
No, we don't.
Now you're saying, well, we haven't really got time to sort this. Everybody seems to be very evasive, and they're very peculiar downstairs, because I've been coming to this hotel for 30 years, and I know there are problems here, but everybody seems to avoid them. And if there are odd energy lines here, the history of this place has been a bit strange, especially over the last 10 years, and most of us know what was here beforehand. And there's always been something not very happy here. It's always been as far as I can remember anyway, a rather sad place. There was always sort of tragedies and dogs being run over at Christmas, and mother dying, and it's almost, and it's continued, and it's almost continuing. It's not so bad at the moment, but you can still feel that something is happening that is very difficult to understand.
Wouldn't it be great if they would get us in to sort it out?
Well, that's right. But I mentioned it to them, but everybody skates around it.
Well, I'd be delighted to do it. We can't do the whole hotel in, right now. So we don't have, it does take a day.
Yeah.
It will take a lot longer than a day to do a whole hotel.
Yeah.
So
But we can
usually find that when there's one,
Oh,
I'm
there'll be
getting
lots,
images
there are
up here
many.
that there's been a gallows in this area at one time. But before, going back in history, the life attracts life. So you have too many black events to clear.
Yes.
This is one of the things.
This is why I say, once you start something, it's very hard to finish it. But what we can do is we can shield off either end of that line for 6 feet, and we will clear that bit that everybody feels horrible on. And then you can see the difference. So, would everybody like us to do that, just to demonstrate how it feels before and after? We won't clear the whole line because we don't have the time, and that is because we never know what's going to come up. But we will demonstrate a part of that line being cleared, having been cleared, and you can feel the difference before and after. Would that satisfy you?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you'd all like to just go and feel that line that I think 2 or 3 of you picked up, and if you want to dowse it with dowsing rods beforehand and afterwards, please do. If not, just use your ultimate dowsing rod and see how it feels before and after. So if you'd like to just go and sit on that line, as many of you who can, and do it in groups just for a few minutes, or stand on the line, see how many of you can get onto it all. We'll do this one. Okay, still sitting on the edge of the line.
Why, in particular, have you chosen this one? Do you get bad vibes on this one? I mean, there's one or two, aren't there?
There are two. The reason we picked up on this one is because other people found this one,
Yes.
and it was mentioned, and also that one's got a massive great big vortex on it, which needs a lot of work doing on it. So, you know, looking at the time,
There's something peculiar through it,
yeah, it's going to be quicker to demonstrate on this one than on that one. And I promise you we're not avoiding the issues. We can deal with this whole building through workshops. So if we can please have a hush.
They probably don't know what they're doing.
A lot of hush.
They're just going
First thing we're going to do is to shield off exactly where Roberta's sitting and exactly where I'm sitting, and we're just going to clear this patch here. So before you may actually see nothing or hear nothing. How's everybody feeling?
Very weird. It's sensational, actually.
Feel it shifting.
Really, yeah.
Goes down thousands of feet as well.
Well, Tony, when you were chanting, there was an echo. Were you doing anything then?
You might hear a lot of weird things actually.
The whole place was, it felt as if it was resonating all over the shop. You just sat there.
At one point I was also chanting.
You were?
Exactly the same time with slightly different keys. It's sort of overtone chanting.
Yes.
But it does
So
sing
that's
with
what
you.
happens. And also you'll be able to hear across this room a lot more.
You probably notice that you can see a lot better as well. Clearer visually.
You said that went down very deep.
Very, very deep.
And also up.
Aerial line as well. And it's also got horizontals coming in. Horizontals and diagonals.
What happens to the move there?
It's transmuted into gold energy, gold light. It's clear. So if you want to come and sit on it and feel the difference, you can feel, you probably don't need to because you can probably feel it already. Is there anybody who can't feel any difference? That's great. Sorry.
I was just going to say that as you were going through the process, I actually experienced various different colours.
Yeah, I saw a bit of a face, but was sort of ruby reddish, and then it changed to violet, and the face got clearer.